He looked down at me while I was fixing his zipper. It was caught on his trousers. The last few weeks, the tension between us was electric. Every gaze in the hallway at my curves, every slight touch in the kitchen. It led to this moment. This was our opportunity to release all the tension. As I worked his zipper to unstick it, I felt something grow. I looked up and smiled. This was it. This was the moment. I undone his zipper and pulled out his tool and began to work. This was last night. But let me rewind about our story, how we came to be in this incredible relationship together. Every passing minute now is intense, pleasurable, and magical. But I never planned on being anyone's mother at 35. Yet here I was, Erica Matthews, taking in my best friend Sarah's teenage son after the accident that took her and her husband 2 years ago. Jake was 16 then, and I couldn't bear to see him enter the system. Being his godmother and Sarah's closest friend since college, it felt natural to step up. Those first months were a maze of grief counseling, legal paperwork, and learning to navigate life with a devastated teenager. I converted my home office into his bedroom, learned his favorite meals, and tried to maintain some sense of normalcy. Jake was quiet at first, lost in his own world of pain. I'd hear him crying at night, and it broke my heart knowing I could never replace what he'd lost. Working from home as a graphic designer gave me flexibility to be there for him. Gradually, we developed our own routine. Morning coffee together before school, where he'd tell me about his classes or soccer practice. I'd help him with homework in the evenings, and we'd share takeout while watching bad reality TV shows that made us both laugh. Jake started to smile again. He excelled in school, made the varsity soccer team, and even helped me repaint the living room. At 18 now, he's grown into a remarkable young man, tall and athletic like his father, but with Sarah's gentle eyes and kind heart. Sometimes when he laughs, I catch glimpses of my best friend that make my chest ache. But lately, something's shifted. Maybe it's the way he looks at me when he thinks I'm not paying attention, or how my skin burns when we accidentally touch reaching for the remote. I find myself noticing things I shouldn't. How his soccer practice leaves his t-shirt clinging to his broad shoulders, the deep timbre of his voice when he says goodnight, the flex of his arms when he helps me with groceries. Last night, I found him looking through old photos of his parents. I sat beside him on his bed, and he leaned his head on my shoulder like he used to right after the accident. But this time felt different. His breath against my neck sent shivers down my spine. When his hand found mine, our fingers intertwined with an electricity that terrified me. "You saved me, Erica," he whispered, using my first name instead of the usual Aunt E. "I don't know what I'd have done without you." The raw emotion in his voice made my heart race. I should have pulled away, should have maintained the boundaries I'd carefully constructed. Instead, I turned to face him, drowning in eyes that held something far more complex than familial love. The photo albums lay scattered across Jake's bed that stormy night, each page a window into a life that ended too soon. I found him there, shoulders shaking silently, clutching a photograph of Sarah at his middle school graduation. At 18 now, he was nearly a man, but in that moment I saw the 16-year-old boy who'd lost everything. "I can't remember her voice anymore, E," he whispered as I sat beside him, careful to leave space between us. "I keep trying, but it's like trying to hold on to water." My heart ached. Sarah had been my best friend since college. Her laugh could light up a room, her spirit infectious. "She used to sing in the kitchen," I offered softly. Terrible 80s power ballads, completely off-key. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Dad would pretend to be annoyed, but he'd join in during the chorus. God, they were awful together. I laughed through the tightness in my throat. "Remember that Christmas karaoke?" "Journey, Don't Stop Believin'." Jake traced his mother's face in the photo. They didn't care how bad they sounded. They were just happy. Thunder rolled outside as we turned another page. Their wedding photo, Sarah radiant in white, James looking at her like she hung the moon. Jake's finger trembled as he touched his father's image. "Sometimes I wake up and for a split second, I forget they're gone," he confessed. "I think I smell Mom's coffee. or hear Dad's footsteps. Then it hits me all over again. I understood that feeling. How grief comes in waves, receding just enough to let you breathe before crashing back. Your mom was the strongest person I knew, I said, and you're so much like her. Am I? His voice cracked. Because I don't feel strong. 2 years and it still hurts like it happened yesterday. I'm trying to make them proud, but... Oh, sweetheart. The tears I'd been holding back spilled over. You do make them proud. Every single day. How do you know? Because I see Sarah in your kindness, in how you help the neighbor kids with soccer, in your stubborn determination. That's all James. When you got that scholarship last week, your mom would have been shouting it from the rooftops. Jake leaned against my shoulder like he used to during those first raw months of grief. Tell me more about them, the stuff I might not remember. For hours we sat there, storm raging outside, sharing stories. How Sarah stress-baked at midnight before big presentations. James's terrible dad jokes. The camping trip where they forgot the tent poles and had to sleep in the car. Your mom used to say you were her greatest adventure, I told him, watching fresh tears track down his cheeks. She'd talk about you for hours at our coffee dates. Every achievement, every worry, every hope she had for your future. I'm scared I'm forgetting things, he admitted. The little details. What if one day I can't remember anything at all? That's why we tell these stories, I said, pulling another album closer. That's why we look at these photos. They live on in our memories, Jake, in everything you are and everything you'll become. The storm eventually quieted, but we kept talking until dawn painted the sky pink. About loss and love, about Sarah's dream for him to go to college, about James teaching him to ride a bike, about the pieces of them that live on in him. Sarah's eyes, James's laugh, their shared passion for helping others. As the sun rose, Jake looked at me with eyes red from crying, but somehow lighter. Thank you, E. Not just for tonight, but for everything. For keeping them alive for me. I squeezed his hand, feeling Sarah's presence in the gesture. Always, sweetheart. They were my family too. That morning marked a shift. Not toward anything inappropriate. Yet, but towards healing. Toward understanding that grief doesn't have a timeline, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is simply remembering together. The morning after our night with the photo albums changed something fundamental between us. Breakfast was quiet, both of us exhausted, but somehow lighter. I caught Jake staring at his mother's favorite coffee mug, the chipped blue one I couldn't bear to pack away. You can use it, you know, I said softly. She'd like that. He wrapped his hands around it, thumbs tracing the rim just like Sarah used to. I dream about them sometimes, he confided. Not the accident anymore. Good dreams. Normal stuff. Like Dad teaching me to drive, or Mom making Sunday pancakes. The vulnerability in his voice made my maternal instincts surge. But there was something else in his expression. A maturity I hadn't noticed before. Days passed, and Jake started opening up more. He'd leave little notes about memories as they came to him, post-its stuck to the fridge or my laptop. Mom's lasagna had extra basil. Dad whistled when he was nervous. Small things, precious things. But I also noticed him watching me differently. Not with desire, but with a deep, complicated emotion I couldn't quite name. He lingered longer in the kitchen when I cooked, asking about his mother's recipes. Started joining me for morning coffee, quiet companionship as the sun rose. One evening, about a week after the photo album night, he found me in the garden. I was tending Sarah's roses. Another thing I couldn't let go. E. His voice was thick with emotion. I need to tell you something. I sat back on my heels, soil still clinging to my gloves. What is it, sweetheart? He struggled, hands deep in his pockets. These past 2 years, you've been... God, this is hard to say. My heart clenched, worried he was about to say something that would complicate our careful balance. You've been everything, he finally managed. A guardian, yes, but more than that. You kept their memory alive while helping me build a new life. And I think I'm falling. I held my breath. Into a place where I can finally remember them with joy instead of just pain. Because of you. Because you've shown me how to honor them while still moving forward. Relief and something deeper flooded my chest. This wasn't inappropriate attraction. This was genuine love, the pure kind between family members who've weathered storms together. You know what Mom would say right now? He smiled through tears. She'd say, well, it's about damn time you two figured out your family. I laughed, reaching for his hand to help me up. He pulled me into a tight hug, and I felt the last bits of tension melt away. This was right. This was healthy. This was healing. Chapter 3. Growing Forward. The following months brought more changes. Jake started dating a girl from his chemistry class, Sophie. The first time he brought her home, I watched him share stories about his parents with her, his voice strong and clear. No more hiding photos or changing the subject when memories surfaced. But some nights, I'd still find him in the kitchen with Sarah's mug, looking at old pictures. Those moments weren't sad anymore. They were contemplative, peaceful. He was processing his feelings, integrating his past with his present. I think I understand now, he said one such night, why you took me in. It wasn't just because of Mom, was it? No, I admitted. It was because from the moment Sarah first let me hold you as a baby, you became part of my heart too. Different from how she loved you, but just as real. He nodded, understanding blooming in his eyes. I love you too, E. Not like I was confused about before, but like family. Real family. Maybe it started that morning I found Jake making coffee, morning light streaming through the kitchen window. He'd grown so tall, confident in a way that caught me off guard. When he handed me Sarah's old mug, our fingers brushed and something flickered in his eyes. You look tired, E, he said softly, lingering closer than necessary. Were you up late working again? I nodded, suddenly aware of how my silk robe clung in the humid morning air. His concern felt different somehow, less boyish, more protective. Days blurred together with increasing moments of tension, like when he helped me reach a high shelf in the pantry, his chest pressing briefly against my back. Or during movie nights, when the space between us on the couch grew smaller, the air heavier with unspoken words. One evening, I was grading papers at the dining table when he came home from soccer practice. His hair was damp from the shower, and he smelled of that woodsy cologne he'd started wearing. He sat beside me, closer than usual. Need help? He asked, shoulder touching mine as he leaned to see my work. I'm almost done, I managed, hyper-aware of his proximity. When I looked up, his gaze was intense enough to make my breath catch. You take care of everyone else, he murmured. Who takes care of you? The question hung between us, loaded with implications. I stood abruptly, making excuses about needing tea, but I felt his eyes follow me to the kitchen. Weekends became an exercise in restraint. He'd work on his car in the driveway, and I'd find myself watching from the kitchen window as he wiped sweat from his neck. When he caught me looking, neither of us looked away fast enough. The worst was during thunderstorms. They still made him uneasy, a remnant of the rainy night his parents died. One particularly bad storm, he appeared in my doorway looking lost. Can't sleep? I asked, setting aside my book. He shook his head, crossing to sit on the edge of my bed like he used 2 years ago. But this time felt charged, dangerous. When thunder cracked, he jumped slightly, and I instinctively reached for his hand. E, he whispered, thumb tracing patterns on my palm. Something's changing between us, isn't it? I pulled my hand away, heart racing. Jake. Don't say it's wrong, he interrupted. Don't say you don't feel it too. I stood walking to the window to put space between us. You're confused. These feelings, they're not real. They feel real, he said quietly. When you smile at me across the kitchen. When you fall asleep on the couch and I carry you to bed. When you wear that green dress that makes your eyes shine. We can't have this conversation, I cut him off, voice trembling. You're grieving, looking for connection. I'm not a child anymore, E. His voice was closer now, right behind me. And this isn't grief or confusion. This is... Thunder crashed again, making us both jump. He steadied me with hands on my shoulders, and I had to fight not to lean back against him. Please, I whispered, unsure what I was asking for. He dropped his hands, respecting the boundary. I'll go, but we can't ignore this forever. After he left, I stood at the window for hours, watching lightning split the sky and wondering how something so wrong could feel so inevitable. After that stormy night, every interaction became a dance on razor's edge. Breakfast meant careful choreography in the kitchen, both of us hyper-aware of the other's presence. I started wearing more structured clothes, higher necklines, as if fabric could shield me from his increasingly bold gazes. One Sunday morning, I was reaching for my coffee mug when Jake came in from his morning run. His shirt clung to him, hair tousled with sweat. Our eyes met in the reflection of the kitchen window, and neither of us moved for what felt like eternity. You look beautiful in the morning light, he said quietly, voice rough. The compliment hung heavy in the air between us. I gripped the counter edge. Jake? I know, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. We're not supposed to talk about it. But we didn't need words. It was in every accidental touch, every loaded silence. When he helped me with dinner, reaching around me for seasonings, his chest would brush my back. I'd forget to breathe, and he'd pause just a fraction too long before moving away. The worst was movie nights. What used to be casual family time became charged with electricity. He'd sit at the opposite end of the couch, but somehow we'd end up closer by the end. Once, I dozed off and woke to find my head on his shoulder, his fingers absently playing with my hair. Sorry, I mumbled, sitting up quickly. Don't be, he whispered, eyes dark in the TV's glow. I like taking care of you for a change. One evening, I was working late in my home office when he brought me tea. Instead of leaving, he perched on my desk, watching me work. Remember when you used to help me with homework? He asked softly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. You'd lean over my shoulder and I'd catch the scent of your perfume. Drove me crazy even then. Jake, we can't. Can't what? Talk? Feel? His hand found mine on the desk. Tell me you don't think about it. About us. I pulled away, standing abruptly. There is no us. I'm your guardian. You're a woman who saved me, he countered, standing too. Who puts everyone else first. Who deserves to be cherished. The space between us crackled with tension. He took a step forward. I took one back. What would people think? I whispered. Since when do you care what people think? His voice was gentle. You didn't care when you took in a broken teenager. Why start now? That was different. Was it? Another step closer. You followed your heart then. Why not now? I escaped to my room that night, but sleep eluded me. All I could think about was the way his hands had trembled when he touched mine, how his eyes held promises I was terrified to acknowledge. Weeks passed like this, a slow burn of almost moments and interrupted conversations. He started leaving little notes where only I would find them. You're beautiful when you're lost in thought. I notice everything about you. Let me love you. Each note was like a stone in my pocket, weighing me down with possibility and guilt. I kept them all, hidden in my bedside drawer, telling myself I would throw them away tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. I found him in the dark garage, swearing under his breath at his misbehaving zipper. His dress shirt was half-tucked, hair still damp from the shower. The homecoming dance started in 20 minutes. Need help? I asked softly, flipping on the light. Jake turned, frustration evident on his face. His zipper had caught fabric from his shirt. As I approached, the garage felt smaller somehow, air thicker. Hold still, I murmured, hands moving to his waist. He inhaled sharply at my touch, but didn't move. The warmth of his skin radiated through the thin dress shirt as I worked the fabric free. Thanks, E, he breathed, voice lower than usual. When I looked up, his face was inches from mine. As I worked his zipper to unstick it, I felt something grow. I looked up and smiled. This was it. This was the moment. I undone his zipper and pulled out his tool and began to work. My hands then stopped. I shouldn't do this, I said. Thunder rumbled outside, another storm rolling in. You should go, I whispered. You'll be late. I don't want to go anymore. His hand found mine, still resting on his hip. Stay, please. The responsible thing would have been to step away. Instead, I remained frozen as his free hand cupped my cheek. His thumb brushed my lower lip, and I couldn't suppress a shiver. Jake, don't tell me this isn't real, he murmured, forehead touching mine. Don't tell me you don't want this as much as I do. The thunder grew closer as we stood there, breathing each other's air. When his lips finally met mine, it felt inevitable, like gravity, like fate. He kissed me with a tenderness that shattered my last defenses. My hands slid up his chest as his tangled in my hair. The storm broke outside, rain hammering the roof, but we were lost in our own world. Somehow we made it upstairs, stumbling through the dark hallway between heated kisses. His bedroom door clicked shut behind us, and reality blurred into something dreamlike and sacred. That night, as rain lashed the windows, we crossed a line we could never uncross. But in the safety of darkness, with thunder masking our whispered confessions, it felt like coming home. Sunlight crept through his blinds, catching dust motes in golden beams. I stirred slowly, aware of Jake's warmth pressed against my back, his arm draped possessively over my waist. The storm had passed, leaving that peculiar silence that follows heavy rain. He murmured into my hair, pulling me closer. Been awake for an hour, just watching you sleep. My body was deliciously sore, memories of the night flooding back, his hands learning every inch of me, the way he'd whispered my name like a prayer, how the thunder had masked our increasingly desperate sounds. We should talk about this, I managed, even as his lips found that sensitive spot behind my ear. Later, he breathed, hand sliding down my stomach. Right now, I just want to memorize how you feel in my bed. The guilt I expected to feel never came. Instead, there was only this: the warmth of his skin, the steady thump of his heart against my back, the way his touch made me arch into him like a cat seeking sun. You're so beautiful like this, he whispered, rolling me onto my back. Morning light painted his shoulders golden as he hovered over me, all sleepy and soft. His lips traced a path down my neck, making coherent thought impossible. Last night had been desperate, needy. This was slower, deliberate, like he was mapping territory he intended to claim permanently. Much later, we finally made it to the kitchen. I wore his discarded dress shirt from the night before, the fabric swimming on my frame. Jake couldn't seem to stop touching me, a hand on my hip as I made coffee, fingers brushing my neck as he passed, quick kisses stolen between sips. What are you thinking? He asked, watching me over the rim of his cup. That this should feel wrong, I admitted, but it doesn't. He set down his coffee, pulling me between his legs where he sat on a bar stool. Because it's not wrong. This thing between us, it's been building for years. We just finally stopped fighting it. The world won't see it that way, I sighed, even as my fingers threaded through his hair. Fuck the world, he said simply. You're the only family I have left. The only person who really knows me. How could loving you be wrong? The word loving hung between us, heavy with meaning. Before I could respond, he stood, lifting me onto the counter with ease. His hand slid under his shirt I wore, finding bare skin. Jake, I gasped as his mouth found my collarbone. We should... Should what? He murmured against my skin. Should pretend we don't want this? Should go back to watching each other across rooms, dying a little every time we can't touch? His words hit home. How many nights had I lain awake, aching for him? How many times had I caught him looking at me with hunger in his eyes, only to force myself to turn away? No more shoulds, he continued, hands moving higher. No more pretending, just us, finally being honest about what we want. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows as he showed me exactly what he wanted, right there on the counter where we'd shared countless innocent breakfasts. His mother's old mug sat forgotten, coffee growing cold. Later, tangled in his sheets again, I traced the lines of his face. Your mom used to say you'd be trouble when you grew up. He laughed, catching my hand to kiss my palm. Pretty sure this isn't what she meant. No, I smiled. But she also always said life's too short to deny real love. His eyes darkened at that word. Is that what this is? Love? Instead of answering, I kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. Sometimes words weren't necessary, especially when your body could speak so much more eloquently. Outside, birds sang in the rain-washed morning. Inside, we created our own little world, where only touch and taste and whispered devotions existed. The future would be complicated, but right now, with Jake's heartbeat steady under my palm, none of that seemed to matter. A month passed in a haze of stolen moments and secret smiles. Our house became a sanctuary where we could just be. His hands finding my waist while I cooked, lazy Sunday mornings spent exploring each other, heated glances across rooms that led to desperate encounters against walls. But reality had to intrude eventually. It started with Marie's weekly coffee date. You're glowing, she said suspiciously, studying me over her latte at our usual cafe. You're seeing someone. I nearly choked on my drink. Marie had been my best friend since college, the one person who'd supported me through taking Jake in all those years ago. I started, then stopped. How to explain that the broken teenager I'd raised had become the man who now made me scream his name in the dark? Oh my God, you are! Marie leaned forward. Spill. Now. My hands shook around my cup. It's complicated. When isn't it with you? She laughed, then froze, watching my face. Wait, holy shit, it's him, isn't it? The cafe suddenly felt too small, too public. Marie? Jake. She breathed the name like a revelation. I've seen how he looks at you lately. How you look at him. Jesus, E. Please don't judge, I whispered, tears threatening. To my surprise, she reached across and squeezed my hand. Honey, I've watched you deny yourself happiness for years, taking care of everyone else, never letting anyone take care of you. But he's a grown man who's loved you forever? She cut me off. Who looks at you like you hung the moon? Yeah, I noticed. We all did. You're not disgusted? Marie snorted. Please, you're both consenting adults. And honestly, it makes a weird kind of sense. You two have always had something special. That night, I told Jake about the conversation as we lay tangled in his sheets. See? He kissed my shoulder. Not everyone will judge us. Sarah was next, my oldest friend, Jake's mother's best friend. She showed up unannounced one evening, catching us in an embrace in the kitchen. Well, she said, making us jump apart. About damn time. I started stammering explanations, but she waved them away. Sarah would have approved, she said simply. She always said you two would either kill each other or complete each other. Looks like it's the latter. Jake's arms tightened around me. You really think Mom would have understood? Sarah smiled softly. She understood love, sweetie. Real love. That's what this is, isn't it? We both nodded, unable to deny it. Then that's all that matters. She hugged us both. Though maybe lock the front door next time? Not everyone was as understanding. My sister Claire recoiled when I told her, spouting words like inappropriate and scandal. Some friends stopped calling. But gradually we built a circle of people who saw us for what we were. Two souls who'd found each other against all odds. One night, as thunder rolled outside, our weather, we'd started calling it, Jake traced patterns on my bare back. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. I thought about the whispers, the lost friends, the complicated explanations. Then I thought about waking up to his smile, the way he knew exactly how I liked my coffee, how he made me feel safe and desired and cherished all at once. "Only that we wasted so much time being afraid," I answered, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted of thunder and truth and tomorrow. Claire's words still echoed days later. "He's practically family," she'd spat. Jake found me in the study, lost in thought by the window. "I know that look," he said softly, turning my chair. "You're drowning in their opinions again." "Maybe they have a point. Maybe we're—" He knelt before me, taking my hands in his. "Let me remind you what we really are." His touch was reverent, fingertips trailing up my arms. "Does family make you shiver like this?" he whispered. "Do they know every inch of your soul like I do?" "Jake." His name escaped like a prayer. "Tell me to stop," he challenged, eyes intense. "Tell me this isn't exactly where we belong." Instead, I melted into his embrace. The storm outside matched our intensity as we lost ourselves in each other, papers scattering from my desk forgotten. Later, catching our breath, I laughed. "You've completely ruined my filing system." "Worth it," he murmured into my neck. The next day brought another test, running into my colleague Thomas at the market. His eyes widened seeing us together, noting Jake's protective stance. "This is unexpected," he managed. "Life's full of surprises," Jake replied smoothly, hands steady on my back. That evening, watching Jake cook, deliberately distracting me with his presence, I realized something. "You enjoy challenging their assumptions, don't you?" He grinned. "Maybe I just enjoy showing everyone what we mean to each other now." The warmth in his voice drew me to him. Coming up behind him, I wrapped my arms around his waist. "Careful," he warned playfully. "Dinner will burn." "Let it," I whispered against his shoulder. The meal was forgotten as we created our own heat, thunder rolling outside like nature's approval of our passion. In these moments, their judgment faded away. There was only us, writing our own story, defying expectations with every touch, every kiss, every whispered declaration of what we'd become to each other. "You ever wonder about the others?" I asked one rainy evening, curled against Jake on our weathered couch. He tensed slightly. "You mean David from your office?" "And Rachel from your gym," I added softly. We'd never really talked about the people we'd tried to love before accepting what was between us. Jake's fingers traced patterns on my arm. "Rachel was my attempt at normal. Every time she touched me, I pretended it was you." The confession hung in the air. I remembered David's earnest proposals, his confusion when I kept refusing. How could I explain I was already bound to someone else, even if I wouldn't admit it then? "Remember when you dated her?" I asked. "I'd hear you come home late. It felt like dying every time." He pulled me closer. "I hated those nights. Hated seeing your face when I'd leave for dates. But I thought I needed to prove I could want someone else. Anyone else." "David proposed 3 times, I admitted. Jake's arm tightened around me. "The last time, he asked why I kept saying no. Said any fool could see I wasn't seeing anyone else." "What did you tell him?" "That my heart wasn't mine to give. I didn't understand then what I meant." We sat in contemplative silence, remembering those we'd hurt trying to deny our truth. Rachel had cried when Jake ended things, confused by his distant behavior those last months. David had simply nodded, like he'd known all along. "Sometimes I see Rachel at the gym," Jake said. "She's married now, seems happy. But there's always this moment where we both remember." "David transferred to Seattle," I added. "Married his college sweetheart last spring. Sent me an invitation, actually.
Did you go?
No. Felt wrong somehow. Like I'd be pretending I hadn't used him to hide from us. The rain picked up outside, drumming against windows that had witnessed years of our denial. How many nights had we sat on opposite ends of this very couch, pretending not to feel the electricity between us?
Remember Tommy? Jake asked suddenly. My freshman year of college?
I nodded. Tommy had been Jake's first serious girlfriend, a sweet art major who'd painted murals in our hallway.
She figured it out before either of us, he continued. Said she saw how I looked at you when you weren't watching, how my whole body oriented toward you in any room. She was always observant, I smiled sadly. Her paintings captured everything she saw.
She told me it was okay, Jake said quietly. That love doesn't always follow conventional paths. I didn't speak to her for months after that. I thought of my own failed relationships. Mark, who said I was emotionally unavailable. Sarah, who accused me of being in love with someone else. James, who simply drifted away, tired of competing with an invisible presence. We hurt so many people, I whispered. We hurt ourselves more, Jake countered. All those years pretending, dating other people, lying to ourselves.
Do you think they've forgiven us?
He considered this.
I think most of them understood before we did. They were just stepping stones on our path to here.
Lightning flashed outside, illuminating old photos on our walls. Jake's graduation, holiday gatherings, moments captured when we were still fighting what we felt. In each one, looking back now, our connection was obvious. The way we stood too close, looked too long, touched too carefully. I saw Rachel last week, Jake admitted. At the coffee shop near work. She was with her husband and their baby.
How was that?
Strange, but good. She hugged me, introduced me to them both. Said she was glad I'd finally found my happiness. I thought of David's wedding invitation, his handwritten note inside. Thanks for being honest enough to let me go find my real love story. Maybe that's what we gave them, I mused. The chance to find their true paths while we were busy avoiding ours. Jake's lips found my temple.
Still feel guilty?
Less now. They all found their way, just like we finally found ours. Outside, the storm began to ease, rain softening to a gentle patter. Inside, we held each other, grateful for all the wrong turns that led us here, all the others who helped us understand what we were running from. No more running, Jake whispered, as if reading my thoughts. No more hiding, I agreed, turning to find his lips with mine. We'd hurt people along the way, yes. But in the end, those relationships had taught us what real love felt like. This undeniable force between us that no amount of denial could dim. Our paths had wandered, but they'd always led back here, to each other, to this truth we'd finally stopped fighting. The rain continued its gentle rhythm, a reminder of that first storm when we'd finally surrendered to what we'd always known. Every drop seemed to whisper forgiveness, for those we'd hurt, for the time we'd wasted, for ourselves.